So one of the obvious things that's going to be different between the current version of CC and CS6 is that CC is likely to support new formats which have come out since they stopped developing CS6. In particular, I'm thinking of 4K. We've started using 4K a lot more. I've been filming for over a year now with my little Panasonic GH4. There's lots of other 4K cameras around. What's CS6 like at 4K? So here I am in CS6 and I've got some GH4 footage here, which is filmed at 25 frames a second. Let's first of all make up a new sequence to put it on. So File, New Sequence, and okay, first problem, where are the 4K presets? It probably does it. Oh, there's something that says 4K there. Let's have a look at it. Nope, there's nothing there which is actually the right size for my 4K footage. These are red 4K presets. They aren't UHD presets. They're not there simply because we weren't doing 4K when they stopped developing CS6. Can I use it? Well, first of all, I can just double click on it and play it, and that works, and my computer's managing to play that back. Let's put it up to full quality. Yep, still managing to play that back, it's looking fine. Let's take it and throw it onto a timeline. This timeline was created with AVCHD settings, 1920 by 1080. So when I drop the 4K footage onto it, it says, oh, do you want to change the sequence to match the clip? Yeah. I couldn't make a sequence in the first place, so let's get Premiere to change it for me. If I come up to the sequence settings, you can see here, it's got me some settings in here and they're grayed out. But if you look very closely there, you can see it set the frame size to 3840 by 2160, which is the right size. So at least I can set up a timeline of the right size. Of course, you could just make up your own sequence preset in the same way that we've always done with Premiere, and you go to File, New, Sequence, go to the settings, take it off all the preset modes, because obviously the red cinema one can do it. That's the one it chose in those settings, but I'm just going to choose Custom. I'm going to type in 3840 by 2160, change it to progressive, and yep, that's got it done. And I can save my own preset, which in the future means I'll just be able to make sequences which are the right size automatically. So that in itself is not insurmountable. And then obviously you can take a whole bunch of clips and throw them on the timeline and trim them, just as you do any other clip. And it all works nicely. So although CS6 doesn't have presets for 4K, you can actually use it and edit at 4K. What about the performance? Well, I've got a little timeline that I've set up here, where I've just got about 3 clips, one on top of the other. The system I'm using for this tutorial has got a Skylake processor, and I'm running 16 gig of RAM. Ideally, I'd probably have 32 if I'm doing 4K, but 16 works. And you can see it's got this 6700 4 GHz Skylake processor, which is the best you can get at the moment. There are better processors, and if you're doing 4K, I'd probably recommend you go for the next one up, which is called a Haswell E. But for the moment, this is the one I'm using for the demo. Let's see how well it copes with this footage here. So I've got 3 clips, a couple of picture-in-pictures and the one in the background, quick phosphate to go between them. It's only about 30 seconds long. I've put up my drop frame indicator here, which you may not be aware of, but if you go to the little spanner, you can get to lots of different settings for the viewer, and I like to put up the dropped frame indicator, which is this one, which will surprisingly tell me when I've dropped frames. So if I'm trying to judge how well it's playing something back, it's quite nice having something telling you whether you're dropping frames. So I've put that up there. I'm going to put the playback quality to full, and I'm going to click the playback button. And off it goes. So obviously managing to handle one layer of video. Up pops the next one, up pops the next one, and yep, it's actually playing that back okay. The drop frame indicator here is green, so it's managing to do it. Oh, it started to drop some frames, which is typically what happens with Premiere. If you've got something that's quite difficult, it might get through a bit of it, but sooner or later it'll struggle. And yeah, it's dropped about 200 frames by the end of it. So it's not quite managing to do 3 layers, but we are talking 3 layers of UHD footage at UHD, so that's quite hard work for anything. I am using an NVIDIA graphics card in this system. It's an NVIDIA 970 graphics card, which is a pretty modern graphics card, and it's one that Adobe CS6 doesn't see as something that can use the Mercury playback engine. The Creative Cloud one does, of course. That's quite easy to get around. If I go to Project Settings and General, you can see here I've actually enabled the Mercury playback engine, and it's very simple. You just find a particular INI file on the computer. In this case, it's my CUDA supported graphics cards, which you'll find in the Premiere Pro CS6 folder. And you open it up and you add in your graphics card. As long as you get the name right, then the Mercury playback engine will work. So again, not insurmountable. So far, CS6 isn't doing too bad at editing this kind of footage. Next thing I want to do is I want to get this out. So I want to export it. So I'm going to go to File, Export Media. And what do I export UHD as? Well, the logical thing to do if you want to store it is to make some kind of H.264 MP4 file. Obviously you can make MPEG-2 files, all that kind of thing, but that's the logical thing to go for. So I'm going to choose that, and then I'm going to try coming down here and look for a UHD setting, and guess what? There isn't a UHD setting. I've got loads and loads and loads of presets, but none of them for UHD. Let's try and make one up. Well, first of all, the footage is 3140. I typed in 3140 as my width, and it's already saying I've got an invalid frame size. So I'm actually having problems making up a preset. How can I export this stuff to a 4K UHD file? Well, the simple answer is I just have to get these settings right. And to be perfectly honest, what I did is I had a look in the Creative Cloud version, and I set the settings that are in the Creative Cloud version in CS6. So what I did was I came down to the video, the basic video settings, set it for 25 frames a second, and came down to where it says Profile and changed it from baseline to main. Level I changed from 3.1 to 5.1. And having done that, I can then come up here and type in 3140 by 2160. And now it's let me set that up. I can put a particular bitrate in. I think 4.5 megabits a second is a little bit low for UHD footage. So I'll stick some kind of bitrate in, and then I export that and it'll actually work. It's just there aren't any settings there to do it in the first place. You can set it up if you know what to do. Of course, it's different in CC. Here we are in CC with a similar sequence, and I've put the drop frame indicator on. Let's just play that through and see what CC does. It's doing fairly well. Output one picture, outputs another. And you'll notice there, CC actually seems to get all the way through this piece of footage without dropping frames. So the performance in CC is a little bit better than it is in CS6. Of course, in CC you also get, if I go to the sequence settings, some actual UHD sequence settings. You've got more settings here inside of Premiere Pro CC, and some of the new ones are these DNX HR settings, where you can see I've got some UHD presets. The other difference that you've got is what's called the render codec. Now that's something which is set up in the sequence settings, so let's open those up again in CS6, and you can see down here I've got this heading that says video previews. This is the format which Premiere will make stuff up into when you render the timeline. So, for example, this bit of the timeline here, actually all marked up as yellow, so Premiere reckons it can play it back, but it was stuttering a bit, so maybe I want to render it to see what it looks like properly and moving properly. Normally you only do this when it's red. I want to do this when it's yellow. You can render red sections by going up to Sequence and then choosing this heading, Render Effects in Work Area, which as you can see is also the Enter key. But you can also render yellow areas by choosing the one underneath it. So this one renders red areas, this one does yellow areas. So if I click on that, it'll actually go ahead and render what's under the work area bar there into a complete movie. And obviously the idea is, instead of trying to play 3 tracks, we'll just be playing 1. And that means I should be able to see it moving properly and looking exactly like the final result. There we are, done the job playing it. The trouble is, with Premiere 6, the render codecs are all HD. So you can see the different options I've got under render codecs here are the iframe codec, which Premiere uses, an AVI file, which is a bunch of different types of codecs. Now some of those you'd think, oh well, maybe if I go to uncompressed, Uncompressed is defaulted to 72405. Let's try typing something else in. Let's try and type in 3140. It didn't take. It only goes up to 1920. Basically, all these codecs only go up to 1920. These other DVC Pro ones, none of those will do any bigger than HD. So the trouble is, your render codecs are all limited to HD. And you can't add other ones into this section, which is a bit of a bummer. So when I play this back, it gets to the rendered area and it's now going to switch to an HD quality picture. It was 4K here, I've rendered it, I'm suddenly looking at HD. So it's not doing its job, it's not showing me the thing at full quality. At the end of the day, it's not that important, because when you go to File and then Export Media, there's this little tick box, Use Previews, which is always unticked. If that is unticked, then it doesn't use the renders when it's making the final movie. It goes back to the originals. So the fact that this bit was made up in HD and not UHD is not the end of the world, because the final result will still be UHD. It's just annoying. Of course, if you're editing 4K into an HD timeline, not a problem. It's when you're putting 4K on a 4K timeline, there isn't a 4K render codec. Well, the one way to get some UHD sequence presets into Premiere 6 is to add in a Blackmagic card. So I've installed the drivers for the Blackmagic Intensity Pro 4K, which does all video sizes up to UHD. And I'm going to make up a new sequence, and you can immediately see here I've got some Blackmagic ones added in, and there are some UHD ones for that. And if I select that, and then go to the sequence settings, you'll see that that actually gives me a codec, which is a Blackmagic codec, which can do UHD. Uncompressed UHD is going to be really hard to play back. So the only option you have in here which is compressed is to use Motion JPEG, which will just about play back off a regular drive, although it's not going to look perfect, but at least it gives you something. In Creative Cloud CC, we do have better codecs. With the CC version, I've got a bunch of codecs that can cope with UHD, and they particularly added in these Avid ones, these DNX HR settings, which are really nice codecs to use for rendering. And of course the other thing is that when you go to export a movie, you choose say H.264, there's these nice match source settings at the top. So you click on any of those and it automatically gets all the settings for you, sets all the profiles up, you haven't had to think about it. You can still change the data rate, but everything else is set. So it's quicker and easier to export in CC than it is in CS6, as you'd expect, because when they made CS6, they weren't really expecting you to do 4K stuff. At the moment, we haven't got any major 4K formats that don't load into CS6, but will load into CC, but that's going to happen sooner or later. More formats are being developed. Sooner or later, there'll be something that you simply can't load into CS6. And they'll never program it to do that, because of course they put all their development into the new stuff. So the net result of that is CS6 is usable, CC is just a bit nicer when it comes to 4K.